second time now, Jesus, I'm going to take care of you. So the lawyer comes back in verse 29, and he says, but the lawyer wanting to justify himself. In other words, wanting to prove that he's smarter than Jesus. He said, I'm going to prove this. I'm going to show you that I'm as smart as I think I am. He said, and so he comes back with his second question. And he says, and who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? Ten Commandments talked about your neighbor in a basic point and how you deal with your neighbor. But who is my neighbor? Jesus was ready. Jesus was ready with a parable. Now again, definition of the parable. Somebody tell me. Somebody tell me a definition of a parable. Definition of a parable. Somebody tell me. Surely, an earthly story with a heavenly vision. The kindergarten teacher got it right. Okay. A parable is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. So Jesus had a parable ready. Remember now, this is a made-up story. This isn't an account of a fact. This is just a story that Jesus told to this parable to prove, or to this lawyer to prove a point. Starts out in verse number 30. Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he fell into the hands of robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. What happened to this man? The way I put it, he got mugged. Now, you know, fellas, you get mugged in all kinds of situations. It can be some guy that goes on the wrong turn in a big city and ends up in a dark alley where he shouldn't be. It could be a guy that made a wrong turn out in the country in Swanee County who ended up on a farm where they're growing something they shouldn't be growing and get in trouble in the same way, right? And so this is a situation. He ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. He got mugged. There was no 911. Go back to the map, man. There was no 911. There was no police. There was nothing like that. If you look at the map here for just a minute, you can see Jerusalem and Jericho. This man was just making a trip of about 15 or 20 miles. And it says going down because Jerusalem was up on a mountain and Jericho was down in the lowlands. So he was going down to Jericho. And he got robbed, is what it boiled down to. So we go on a little bit then, and we see the neighbors coming. The guy got mugged, and we see the neighbors coming in verse number 31. It says, a priest happened to be going down the same road. And when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. Now, the priest was a man of God. Very similar to maybe some of these gentlemen we have up there. Somebody who was a preacher. He was going on his business. And he's walking down the road and he sees this man laying over here. And instead of helping him, he starts thinking in his head, now it's against the law for me to touch a dead body because I'll be unclean. Now unclean was a spiritual term that the Jews used. And if you touched a dead body, that was one of the things that made you unclean. You had to days and go through all kinds of things to get clean again, so that you could do your work as a priest. The priest said, if I bother this man and he's dead, I'm going to be unclean. And I'm not going to be able to do my job. Nice rationalization, right? You know, coming up with an excuse why you don't have to do something. It's sort of like, why didn't I take the garbage out? Well, I didn't want to get my hands dirty and have my good clothes on. You understand, don't you, honey? You know, I couldn't do that, right? See? So that's how we come up with rationalizations of why I didn't do what I had to do. And we all can think of reasons that we've done this. So that's what the priest did. He said, I can't do this. After all, I might get unclean. He said, I'm in a hurry. I've got places to go and people to do. I've got work to take care of. I've got the living to deal with. This guy's dead or so the next guy that comes by then is the Levi. Verse number 32. So too a Levi, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. Now the Levi was a step below the priest. The Levi was the guy in the Old Testament who packed up the tabernacle when the Jews got ready to move and moved to some place, did all the cleaning, did all the work. He was sort of a step below the activities of the priest. But he also had the same problems the priest had. He couldn't get unclean because he couldn't do his job. He was busy and had places to go. He was afraid that the robbers might come. And all those things. He said, I'm not going to mess with this man. I'm not a doctor. I can't do anything with him. If it was today, what would somebody say? I'm not a doctor. I'm afraid I'll get sued. Right? Afraid somebody will be taking me to court on this thing. So he was gone. Now, we have a tendency to ask ourselves the question, how in the world could this happen? These people seen this man who was in need of help and not helped him. But if you go to the newspaper, I did a little search on the internet and came across this headline. It says, homeless Good Samaritan. Now they're taking this term that we're talking about today. Homeless Good Samaritan left to die in New York Street. On April the 27th, 2010, last year. Just a little bit of what it said. A homeless man lay face down, unmoving on a sidewalk outside an apartment building, blood from a knife wound pooling under his body. He's laying down on the ground, they see blood running out on the ground. One person passed by in the early morning, then another and another. Video footage from a surveillance camera showed 7 people going by. Some turning their heads to look, others stopping to gawk. Another one stopped and turned him over and looked at him. But nobody helped him. So we look at that and we say, how in the world can this priest and Levi do this? Just like those 7 people could. Not loving their neighbor is really what it boils down to. Blood enters the hero. Verse number 33 to 35. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he had pity on him. Now, Samaritan was the most hated person there was of the Jews. He was somebody that nobody liked. Now, remember, Jesus is making up the story, right? So Jesus can make the hero anybody wants to be. It could have been the fisherman, like Peter. It could have been a tax collector that everybody hated, like Matthew. It could have been a zealot. And Simon was a zealot who was a revolutionary. And the Jews didn't like him either. But the most hated group of people were the Samaritans. Now, the Samaritans were half-breed people. They were part Jew and part something else. And the Jews hated these people because they had contaminated their bloodline with some other group of people. And they lived in the purple area up here on my map, where it says Samaria. And they were in the middle of Jewish territory. Galilee was on the north, and Judah was on the south. Jesus chose the Samaritan to be the man that they hated, to be a man that was in charge and going to be the hero of our story. Verse number 34, it says, when he, the Samaritan, went to him, bandaged his wounds, poured oil and wine, then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn to take care of him. Pulled out his first aid kit. Oil and wine was the best way that they knew to take care of the wounds, to clean the wounds, to bandage them. He put him on his donkey, didn't worry about getting blood on the seat covers or anything like that. Didn't worry about damaging anything. Took this man to an inn and took care of him. Now even more, verse 35. The next day, the man spent all night taking care of this fellow. Probably didn't sleep a wink because he was making sure that this guy was all right. The next day, he, the Samaritan, took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper. He said, look,